The rain had been falling since morning, the kind that made the city feel smaller and quieter than usual. Emma Hart stood in her apartment kitchen, staring out the window as cars passed below, their headlights blurred by water. The world outside kept moving, but inside her chest something felt stuck. She had lived in Portland for 8 years, long enough to know this feeling well, the sense that life was fine, stable, even comfortable, yet incomplete in a way she couldn't easily explain. Emma was 32, organized, responsible, and known among her friends as someone who had her life together. She worked as a graphic designer, paid her bills on time, and kept her apartment clean and calm. People often told her how lucky she was. She smiled when they said it, because she knew they meant well. Still, there were nights like this one when she wondered if luck was supposed to feel so quiet. Her phone lay on the kitchen counter, screen dark. She had placed it face down an hour ago, trying not to check it every few minutes. She knew Daniel would message. He always did. They had been together for 2 years, long enough to share routines and habits, long enough for love to settle into something steady and familiar. Daniel Brooks was not the kind of man who made grand speeches or dramatic promises. He was thoughtful, calm, and dependable. They met at a birthday dinner hosted by a mutual friend, seated across from each other at a crowded table. Their first conversation was simple, almost ordinary. They talked about work, travel, and favorite movies. There was no rush of sparks, just a quiet ease that felt safe. That safety became the foundation of their relationship. They spent weekends cooking together, taking walks through the city, planning small trips. Friends admired them. Family approved. Everything seemed to fit. Yet over time, Emma noticed a strange feeling growing inside her. It wasn't dissatisfaction exactly. Daniel was kind. He listened. He showed up. But sometimes, late at night, Emma would lie awake wondering why her heart felt restless. She tried to push the thought away, telling herself that real love wasn't meant to be exciting all the time. Real love, she believed, was supposed to be steady. But the feeling didn't disappear. It waited quietly, showing up in small moments when conversations stayed on the surface, when dreams were discussed but never deeply explored, when she felt parts of herself remain untouched and unseen. She loved Daniel, but she wondered if love alone was meant to carry everything. Across town, Daniel sat in his apartment surrounded by half-filled boxers. He was preparing for a move to Vancouver, a promotion that promised better pay and a fresh start. His friends congratulated him. His parents were proud. Still, he felt uneasy. The decision had come easily on paper, but emotionally, it left him unsettled. Daniel had always believed that choosing the right path meant choosing the logical one. He valued stability and avoided risks whenever possible. His relationship with Emma fit perfectly into that mindset. She was supportive, intelligent, and reliable. With her, life made sense. But as the move approached, Daniel felt a growing pressure in his chest. It wasn't fear of the new job. It was the feeling that he was leaving something unresolved behind. Over the past few months, he had noticed changes in Emma's, small pauses in conversation. Moments when her eyes seemed distant, as if her thoughts were elsewhere. He wondered if she felt the same quiet unease that had begun to follow him. Daniel picked up his phone, typing and deleting the same message several times. He didn't want to worry her, but he also didn't want to pretend everything was fine. Finally, he typed the words he had been avoiding and pressed send. "We need to talk before I leave." Back in her kitchen, Emma felt her phone vibrate. She turned it over slowly, reading the message once. Then again, her stomach tightened. Not from shock, but from recognition. She had felt this moment coming, even if she didn't know what it would bring. She set the phone down and took a deep breath. The rain continued outside, steady and patient. Emma thought about the version of herself she had been trying to protect. One who believed that choosing one person, one path, one kind of love was enough. That belief had guided her for years, keeping her safe from confusion and hard questions. But now, Those questions stood quietly at her door. She thought about the early days with Daniel, how calm everything felt, how easy it was to imagine a future together. She also thought about the parts of herself that still felt unexplored, the emotions she rarely voiced, the desires for deeper connection she never fully expressed. None of it felt wrong, yet none of it fit neatly into the life she had built. Emma replied after a few minutes, "Okay, when?" Daniel answered almost immediately, "Tomorrow. There is a cafe near your place, the one with the old wooden tables." Emma knew it well. They had shared many conversations there, laughter and plans filling the space between cups of coffee. This time would be different. She could feel it. That night, neither of them slept well. Emma lay awake, listening to the rain fade into silence, her thoughts moving fast despite the quiet room. Daniel sat on his couch, staring at packed boxes, wondering whether honesty would bring relief or loss. They weren't facing a sudden crisis. There was no betrayal, no anger, no dramatic event forcing them apart. What stood between them was more complicated and harder to name, a growing understanding that one connection, no matter how meaningful, might not answer every emotional need. By morning, the rain had stopped. The city looked washed clean, streets shining under pale light. Emma dressed carefully, choosing comfort over style. She looked at herself in the mirror and noticed how calm she appeared. Inside, though, her heart beat fast. As she stepped outside, she didn't know what the conversation would change. She only knew that pretending was no longer an option. Somewhere between love and truth, a decision waited to be made. And both Emma and Daniel were beginning to realize something they had never said out loud before. One was never enough. The cafe smelled of fresh coffee and baked bread, warm and familiar. Emma arrived early, sliding into a corner booth by the window, her fingers wrapped around a steaming mug. Outside, the city moved on with its usual rhythm, but inside, time seemed slower, heavy with expectation. She kept glancing at the door, waiting for Daniel. Every few minutes, her heart would tighten, as if it knew exactly how this meeting could change everything. She had rehearsed the conversation in her mind countless times, what she would say, what she would avoid, how to keep it calm, still. Knowing he was coming made her feel exposed in a way she hadn't expected. Daniel arrived, shaking raindrops from his jacket even though the skies had cleared. His eyes found hers immediately, a mixture of relief and tension in his expression. He moved with careful steps, as though aware of the fragile balance between them. When he sat down, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but heavy, filled with unspoken thoughts. He ordered a coffee, black, while Emma kept hers warm in her hands. Neither of them rushing to fill the silence just yet. At first, they talked about ordinary things, the traffic on the way, a new coffee blend, a recent article Emma had read about design trends. It felt like a shield keeping them from diving into the deeper conversation that hung over them. But beneath the words, both knew the truth was waiting. Every sentence, every pause, carried the weight of what they hadn't admitted yet. Noticed how Daniel's eyes lingered on her, searching as if he was trying to read her mind. Trying to understand what she felt before she spoke it aloud. She felt a pang of longing for clarity, for honesty, for the safety that came from truth, even if it was uncomfortable. Finally, Daniel set his cup down and leaned back, exhaling in a way that made it clear he had reached a decision. "Emma, do you ever feel like something is missing?" His voice was soft, careful, almost afraid to break the quiet. Even when everything looks right, Emma's throat tightened. She looked down at her hands, noticing how the warmth of the cup seeped through her fingers. She had been feeling it for months, a subtle emptiness she could neither name nor ignore. All the time, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about it too," he said. "About us, about everything. And I realize, I feel like we're only touching the surface, like theirs. more inside us that we're afraid to share, or maybe we don't even know how to share. His eyes held hers, seeking understanding. Seeking permission to speak truths they had both been avoiding. Emma swallowed, emotions rising quickly. She had rehearsed denial, practiced gratitude, pretended that love alone could fill every gap. But now, hearing Daniel say the words she had been too afraid to voice, something shifted inside her. "I thought love was supposed to be enough," she said. "But sometimes it doesn't feel like it is." Daniel's gaze softened, and he reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers without touching. "That scares me," he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice matching her own. "Because I care about you more than I can say, and the idea that it's not enough, that we're not enough, it's terrifying." Koa met his eyes, her heart aching with recognition. She felt seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. "It doesn't mean we aren't enough," she said slowly, trying to steady her voice. "It just means we're human. We're allowed to feel more than one kind of longing, more than one kind of need. It doesn't take away from what we have." Daniel exhaled, leaning back as he absorbed her words. I think I've been afraid to admit that," he said. "Afraid that wanting more would mean we're failing, when maybe it just means we're alive. That we need honesty more than comfort." Emma nodded, a quiet relief washing over her. The rain had stopped completely now, sunlight filtering through the clouds and making the cafe feel even warmer. Yet the truth between them was heavy and real. They weren't talking about betrayal. They weren't talking about someone else. They were talking about emotional hunger, the kind that grows quietly, insidiously, until it can't be ignored. And they were finally brave enough to face it together. For a moment, neither spoke, letting the words settle. The cafe was filled, with soft murmurs, clinking cups, the occasional laugh from another table. But none of it touched the intensity of their conversation. Emma's mind raced, thinking about how much she had held back, how many pieces of herself she had kept locked away in the name of stability. Daniel's presence beside her, patient and open, made her realize how much she wanted to be seen fully, not just in comfort, but in longing and in honesty. Daniel shifted, his hand brushing hers briefly, a touch that was careful, respectful, and filled with unspoken emotion. "Emma," he said softly, "I don't want to hurt you. But I also don't want to pretend anymore." His words hit her like a gentle shock, grounding her in the truth she had known for weeks but hadn't faced. "I don't want pretenses either," she replied. Her voice was steady now, her heart racing, but with clarity she hadn't felt before. "Let's stop pretending. Let's be honest with ourselves. Even if it's messy, even if it's scary." They finished their drinks, lingering in the space between them, neither rushing to leave. Outside, sunlight glinted on wet streets, pedestrians moving with purpose, unaware of the quiet revolution happening in that small cafe corner. Emma and Daniel sat together, not holding back, not seeking easy answers, just existing in a moment of mutual honesty. When they finally stepped outside into the fresh air, the world seemed both familiar and different. The city noises felt sharper, the sunlight warmer, the breeze softer. They walked together without speaking, each lost in thought, yet connected by a fragile, powerful understanding. Neither knew what the future would hold, whether they would stay together, grow apart, or change in ways they couldn't predict. But for the first time, they knew one truth. They had been brave enough to admit it. One person, one relationship, one love it was not always enough to fulfill every longing or answer every question. And recognizing that truth did not diminish their care for each other. It only made it real as they parted ways that afternoon. Neither offered promises they weren't ready to keep. There were no dramatic gestures, no declarations of forever. Just a quiet understanding, a shared recognition that love could be deep, meaningful, and still not cover every corner of the heart. They walked away slowly, each carrying a mix of relief and fear, knowing that honesty had changed everything. The realization that one was never enough settled between them. Not as a tragedy, but as a beginning of foundation for whatever came next. The air felt lighter, the city brighter, and both Emma and Daniel understood that facing the truth was not an ending, but a chance to live fully, bravely, and openly. They had touched something rare, a connection that demanded honesty above comfort, understanding above certainty. And that was enough to keep moving forward step by step, heart by heart.